I've said it before and I'll say it again, slimes make everything better. I don't care if it's a super serious drama, I don't care if it's a heartfelt romance, throw a slime in it, I'm probably gonna like it even more. I love the slimes in this episode, they very much had the star attraction, I guess, because, I mean, how many times have we seen cultists in anime, and instead of having the main character just go in and deal with it himself, instead, he almost acts like he's playing an RTS game and he's controlling his troops, telling them where to go. And those troops just so happen to be adorable slimes who can squish through doors, or they team up to open up the doors with the levers. But it's when they start robbing the place blind that really was like, this is the coolest shit that this show has shown us. Not to say like fighting a dragon or fighting all the different things they've done hasn't been exciting, but there's something about just letting these wholesome little blobs they speak in such an adorable voice. The fact that you just see them like stacked up together and stealing all the books. Granted, the scrolls, the books, they kind of were useless at the end of the day because they must have had a curse on them or some sort of magic spell. Because when he tried to read them, ultimately they just kind of went away. The only thing he could read was the hit list of what this cult or the group is after in terms of who they want to kill. And at the very bottom, most likely the newest name, is the adventurer Yuji. And for a guy who's been trying to avoid most things, just kind of going about his day, the fact that he now has hitmen after him, sure, you could argue, I mean, the dude has an arsenal of skills that even when he can't deal with certain things, he can craft his own to deal with them in the case of the barrier. But still, it almost feels to me with the bloody ending that they showed us, it almost is like, okay, this is going to be a different type of threat that he hasn't dealt with up to this point. And it'll be fun to see what will put up a challenge, because you can rewind back to the dragon fight. There was a couple of moments in that fight when he was being tossed around, he crashed into a mountain, and he struggled to find the right skills and magic spells to use in order to defeat it, because he has such a ridiculous amount of skills, because when he first got there, we saw him just absorb a bunch of skills with the slimes. So he has to look through menus and he has to think on the fly. So if he goes up against these master level assassins who very much are very quick, they're very nimble, it's entirely possible we could see a fight that actually pushes him to his breaking limits, and it'll be interesting to see, because the biggest handicap they've given Yuji isn't the fact that he's necessarily weak against certain things. In fact, in theory, the amount of skills he has in his arsenal could make him indestructible if he was to ever master and not have to look through menus and craft a bunch of spells that are perfect for any scenario. But because he's still new to this, it's almost like you've been given so much power at the start, but there's like a billion game mechanics you're still trying to learn out, so sometimes he hits the right one right away. Other times he's summoning light magic to go up against a light dragon, right? It just doesn't make sense. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do with that hit list. But it was just really fun because with last week's episode, which I praised very highly, it was basically cutting wood, enjoying food. It was just a very simple slice of life. But it gave so much humanity to a guy who's been pretty depressed, all things considered, given what we've heard about his original life and just feeling like he's continuing to be relied on. Finally, for the first time, he found a village that he wanted to help because he found something he enjoyed. He really liked their cooking, and granted, given he was a businessman who probably never ate good food, given that he worked pretty much every hour of the day, he probably was eating from vending machines or just generic convenience store dinners. It's very understandable why this new world where he can actually enjoy cuisine is something that he's saying, well, this is worth fighting for. I just wasn't quite expecting the cultist storyline to go as intense as they did, because like the suicide pacts, when you kidnap or capture people who are a part of a cult, often they have some sort of kill mechanism, something in like a fake tooth that if they crunch it, it's like a cyanide pill, they end up dying. We saw that. That's not to be basically shocked with, but it's when there's only like 5 of them left, because as they're robbing this place blind, he turns his slimes invisible. They can't see shit. They decide, well, basically, the only people who can be in here who's doing this is the intruder and us. And they just kill themselves. And because once they're all dead, it unleashes this giant hellfire. It was pretty crazy, because I have to say, like, often the anime's presentation, it's not jaw-dropping. I wouldn't say it's ugly, but it's not the best looking thing of the season. But it has a style that I find is charming, especially when you look at the creatures, from the slimes to Proud Wolf, everything like that. When it gets into those moments where he starts summoning his barriers. He summons like 3 to begin with, and it's doing well, but because this is supposed to be something that destroys a continent based on how they're talking about it, it very much wasn't enough. And then he realizes that he doesn't have something that can deal with it, so he starts making one. And to see how he makes it on the fly, and then to see how they animate that with it expanding and it feeling like it's a nuclear bomb. Like, that's how it came across, that it was something that powerful. When you compare, I think it was the first episode, it might have been the second, but I think it was the first episode when he does a similar thing to protect the village that he's basically protecting there when he's standing on top of the building. It makes that look very small in comparison. And I think the way they've escalated the threat and dangers while pretty much staying true to the type of style of combat we've experienced up to this point, it's really, really fun. And when you just see his out-of-body experience, because he finally got to have the stew he's been dreaming of, there's like a picture when he's like in his weird kind of out-of-body experience. You see like a bunch of like farmlands, cows, everything else like that, and he just is like passed out on the floor just so happy. And it really has turned this show, I think, over the past 3 episodes, and it's something that's been a pretty fun show, pretty enjoyable show. Wouldn't rate it as one of the best of the season. And it's something that, I still wouldn't say it's one of the best of the season, but it's something that's so damn charming that it just wants to be a simple, fun adventure with this man going about his days, exploring different things, trying to keep a low profile. Oh shit, you saw that big explosion? I guess it was meteors like you're saying. And because they dealt with the cult that was sucking away basically all the magic or life in the area by the looks of it for their magical stones, the frost started to melt, and now they have a good working village that they're prepared with all the wood he cut, but also don't have to worry about freezing to death anymore. I like the fact that it's just like these little self-contained stories in this world that in any other show would be like, okay, go fight the Demon Lord, go defeat the bad hero that turned evil, something like that. And while, yes, he'll naturally bump into threats that are familiar, the reason he does so isn't because he chases after it, it's just more so he's trying to have like a fun, leisurely life with his pals, and ultimately he gets roped in, sometimes unwillingly, like at the start of the show, or willingly, like in the case of this arc. And I'm glad that rather than just going the route of, I think it was 2 episodes, or 3 episodes ago actually, when he first discovered that cult, the weird looking village, I really thought the following episode would just immediately jump into that threat, but instead they let us get acquainted with this village to then end with that. So I think they're doing a good job with pacing and structuring. While it's not trying to be groundbreaking in any way, I really enjoy the charm of the show. I like following Yuji. Like I mentioned in last week's video, it's no different than watching many video game protagonists that don't really have the best personality in terms of being very like high energy or very gripping, but the characters around them make it an enjoyable story to follow. So when you have a bunch of slimes, you have Proud Wolf. Proud Wolf doesn't do a whole lot except compliment the slimes or hide in a hole when he thinks the world's about to end. But it's just a very charming show, all things considered, that doesn't take itself too seriously, but it does have a level of threat that is there, as seen by the nuclear bomb going off, or even the hitmen at the end of the episode. But it's been a pretty fun watch, and I actually found myself enjoying it more the past few episodes from where it started off as a pretty fun slime show. And like I say, slimes make the world so much better, and if only we could have our own little army of little slime minions that could do our bidding like this. But at the very least, this season of anime has been showing us a few different shows of slimes, and I'm thankful for it. But of course, I'll pass the torch over to you. We finished the Cultist arc. I'm not sure exactly where we'll go from here, because even though they did tease the hitmen, one could suspect that could be the end goal of this season, so maybe there'll be a different arc that we focus on first. But let me know what you're thinking and what you hope to see with the future of the show. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.